Have you ever noticed that the people who seem the simplest sometimes carry the deepest wisdom? They may not dress in riches or speak with power, but their lives hold lessons that can outlast generations. Today, I will tell you the story of a humble farmer and his secret letter. A letter that was hidden for years, but when finally revealed, it changed everything. The farmer's name was Samuel. He was born in a small village at the edge of the mountains. His family was poor, and from the time he was a child, he worked in the fields, helping his father till the soil and plant seeds. Life was never easy. The summers were hot, the winters were cruel, and the earth gave just enough to survive. But Samuel learned early on that complaining never made crops grow. Work, patience, and faith did. When Samuel grew older, he inherited a small piece of land. It wasn't much, just a few acres of soil, a small wooden hut, and a couple of oxen. He married a gentle woman named Miriam, and together they built a simple life. They didn't have gold or treasures, but they had love. Miriam often said, "A warm meal and a kind heart are riches enough." Samuel believed her. But even with love, the hardships never stopped. Storms sometimes destroyed their crops. Droughts cracked the land. At times, Samuel would spend days in the field only to harvest almost nothing. He worked from sunrise to sunset, his hands rough, his back bent, his body weary. Yet whenever he saw a hungry neighbor, he shared his food. Whenever he saw a widow in tears, he comforted her. Whenever a child walked barefoot in the cold, he gave away his own shoes. The villagers often whispered, "Samuel is too kind for this world. He has so little, and yet he gives so much." But Samuel never saw it as giving away. He saw it as planting seeds in other people's hearts. What no one knew was that during one of his darkest nights, Samuel had written something. Years ago, when his crops failed, debts grew heavy, and he felt crushed under the weight of poverty, Samuel sat alone by candlelight. Miriam and the children were asleep, but his mind would not rest. He felt broken, defeated, almost ready to give up. That night, instead of letting despair consume him, he picked up a piece of paper and began to write. He wrote his fears. He wrote his questions. He wrote the lessons he was learning in silence. Word by word, he poured his soul into that letter. And when the candle burned low, he folded the paper, placed it in a wooden box, and hid it under his bed. He told no one about it, not even Miriam. He called it in his heart, his letter of truth. Years passed. Samuel grew older, and his hair turned white. His children became adults, each with their own families. They respected their father, but sometimes they wondered why he never chased wealth, why he worked so hard and yet lived so simply. Some even felt embarrassed, comparing their family to richer villagers. But Samuel never seemed bothered. He often smiled quietly, as if he carried a treasure no one else could see. One winter, Samuel fell gravely ill. His strength faded, and he could no longer work in the fields. The whole village came to see him, for everyone loved him. His children gathered around his bed, worried not only about losing their father, but also about what he would leave behind. Some whispered about inheritance. Was there money, land, something hidden? Samuel could see the questions in their eyes. With a faint smile, he whispered, "Bring me the wooden box under my bed." His eldest son obeyed, confused. Inside was only a folded letter, yellowed with age. Samuel's hands trembled as he took it. "My children," he said softly. "This is my secret. Tonight I will share with you what I have kept hidden all my life." The room fell silent. Samuel unfolded the letter, and in his weak but steady voice, he began to read. "My beloved children, and all who may one day hear these words, when I was young, I believed I was poor. I believed I had nothing. I looked at my torn clothes, my empty pockets, my weary hands, and I felt ashamed. But then life taught me something I will never forget. I realized that true wealth is not measured by coins or land, but by the seeds we plant in other people's lives." He paused, catching his breath. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he continued. "There were nights when I wanted to give up, nights when I wondered why hardship always came to me. But in those moments, I looked around and saw neighbors who had even less, children who cried with hunger, widows who had no one to help them. And I asked myself, if I have even a little strength, why should I not share it? So I did. And each time I gave, my heart grew richer, even when my pockets stayed empty." His voice cracked as he read the final lines. "I may leave this world without gold, without land, without treasures, but I leave with something greater: love, kindness, and gratitude. That is my secret. That is the wealth I carried in silence. Do not waste your life chasing shadows of riches. Chase the light that lives in giving, in serving, in loving. For that is the only treasure death cannot steal." The room was filled with silence. Some wept openly. His children, who once worried about inheritance, realized they had received more than money could ever buy. The villagers bowed their heads in respect. In that moment, everyone understood. They had been living beside a man who seemed ordinary, but carried extraordinary riches in his heart. Not long after, Samuel passed away peacefully. But his letter lived on. His children copied it carefully and shared it with their own children. The villagers, moved by his words, began to read it at gatherings and festivals. Soon, the letter traveled beyond the village. Strangers carried it to distant towns, reading it in schools, temples, and homes. Generations later, people still spoke of Samuel, not as a rich man, not as a powerful man, but as the farmer who taught the world the meaning of true wealth. His simple letter became a lantern of wisdom, lighting the path for all who felt lost in darkness. And so, the farmer who owned so little gave the world something that outlived him: a truth, a reminder, a seed of wisdom planted in countless hearts. My friend, remember this: you may think you are poor, but if you give kindness, you are rich. You may think you are small, but if you plant love, you are great. You may think you have nothing to offer, but if you live with gratitude, you already have everything. That is the farmer's secret. That is the treasure worth carrying. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. And for more life-changing stories, don't forget to subscribe to Life Lessons Library.